What is up, pushers? We are going to go ahead and get started today by looking at the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War as it's known in Europe. This is going to be one of the most important things we're going to look into all year because its impacts are so massive, and we're going to get there right away. So let's first look at our learning targets for the day. That K3.1.I, I can describe the causes, so we should see that, for the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War, as well as the war's impact on Great Britain and American colonies' relationship. Okay, so think about the causes for the 7 Years' War, the impacts of it, especially on the relationship of Great Britain and America. So, this French and Indian War, the background, let's first get into that. It is, at this time, it's the end of the 17th century, okay, so the end of the 1600s, and American colonies are extremely valuable real estate, right? All of the western parts of the United States are relatively open and kind of unclaimed. Recall that France has control of the Midwest, and Spain, yes, has Texas through parts of California, or modern-day California, but as a whole, it's very valuable real estate, and every country kind of wants some. And so there has this 7 Years' War between Britain and France. And as a whole, the colonists, as well as British citizens or British colonists in Canada, are really just kind of chess pieces in this larger game. This French and Indian War is a fight for the Ohio River Valley, but it's really a fight as it's a part of. So as you said, the real reason here that people are fighting over this is the Ohio River Valley. It's an extremely, extremely important piece of real estate, and there's 3 real North American powers fighting over this, right? It's not just the U.S. or the colonists, the British and the French. It's also the Iroquois, who are one of the most powerful native tribes at this time, and they want to extend their power in the region. It's also colonial Americans. Right? They would like to expand the amount of space that they can take up around this area. Virginia is becoming very populated. Right? It's a great space to expand into. And the French, who link their Canadian holdings to the holdings west of the Mississippi, they want to expand into some of the places controlled by Great Britain at this time. So, additionally, a piece that is just interesting to know is that George Washington, who's going to become famous during the French and Indian War and get his claim to fame and really get his start there, has over 500,000 acres claimed in this region. So yes, he was fighting for Britain and for the colonies, but he was also fighting a little bit for his own economic gain. So as we said, Washington's going to gain a lot of his fame during this area, especially at this Fort Duquesne battle. Let's see if we can find this here. Washington famously marches in the French fort and attacks it, eventually defeated, but his impact is not to be understated. So in this, George Washington actually almost gets killed. It's this huge massacre, really. He's a volunteer under the British General Edward Braddock. And Braddock really refused to use Native Americans, and this kind of like arrogance of that. And so the French are able to take advantage of that in many ways. So that's at this Fort Duquesne battle in which they're horribly defeated. He walks right into a trap in which the French, I think, lose only like 23 people, where the British, including George Washington's men, lose over 900 people, including all of their cannons, supplies, and things like that. So a horrible loss for Washington, leading to multiple bullet wounds for him. But once again, first shots have been fired, and Washington is going to become extremely famous for this because people see him as this figure, large, tall man sitting on his white horse, who cannot be killed, takes multiple. And so one of the things this is going to expose is the differences in fighting styles. In that previous battle, we heard one of my favorite George Washington quotes is that he writes that the British broke and ran as sheep before hounds, but the Virginians behaved like men and died like soldiers. And this is important down the road to think about this, especially as we move towards the Revolutionary War. And so the difference in their fighting styles is really order. Right? The colonists use guerrilla tactics, not a big fan of protocols or order, and they, one thing, also believe that the British should be the ones paying for this war. They see that the British are benefiting from it, whereas the British want to march in foundation. They're very disciplined and believe the colonists should pay for their own defense. And additionally, their officers are often seen as prima donnas. They have their tea settings and servants who travel around with them, and colonists aren't going to like that very much. And so the colonists, as a part of this war, start to have their first official call for a union of states. Okay, and so this Albany Plan of Union, put together by our very own Benjamin Franklin, is going to be the first official plan to try to put together a confederation of states, or in some way unionize or unite the states together against this image that we see of join or die is often we think of used with the Revolution, but it started in the French and Indian War. It was put together by Benjamin Franklin with a plan to put an intercolonial military and taxation plan so that they can unite the colonies against this threat. So what's most important about this, more than anything else, what we need to know about this French and Indian War is this Treaty of Paris is the single most important piece. Okay, this is what is going to cause all of the problems for the colonists in their relationship with Great Britain. So one of those impacts is that France is expelled from North America, which will definitely have multiple impacts. France is going to lose land all over the world, but for what we need to know that they were expelled from North America. That includes all their Canadian holdings, any land in the United States east of the Mississippi. They were expelled from the Americas. Additionally, England is now going to be essentially dominating over the continent. They have all of Canada and most of the eastern seaboard, most everything east of the Mississippi, which is a huge step for them, right? So for Great Britain, one, it greatly enlarges their debt, right? Their debt is going to become massive, really drastically increases because of this, the 7 Years' War, and so they're going to have to pay that off. Guess who they're going to be looking at to pay that off? Hint, hint. Additionally, there's some content building both for the colonists and against them. Colonists are seeing this as a great opportunity to move west, and Great Britain maybe isn't seeing it as the same for them. The Great British want the colonists to pay for some of the war, and the colonists think that they should just be benefiting from it because they didn't have to fight in it. So it's going to create some contempt between the two sides here as well. For the American colonists, it really is the first real moment to unite them, right? Remember this join or die, the Albany Plan of Union? Remember the Albany Plan of Union? Remember that? It's going to be the first real moment where they attempt to unite. The Albany Plan eventually fails, but it's an attempt to unite, which had never been made before. That intercolonial military and taxation plan, right? Additionally, they're going to grow some of these bitter feelings towards the British. Remember? And we said that George Washington had 500,000 acres of land. He's probably thinking, great, I now can access this. But that's not really the case. Right? It's not exactly the case. And so we're starting to build this rivalry. Right, so the colonists are looking to benefit from this war, but something's going to happen as the war comes to a close in 1763 that is going to make that difficult. In 1763, this Ottawa chief, Pontiac, who's going to be very upset about the outcome of the French and Indian War, because remember the relationships that the French built with the Native Americans. They intermarried, they traded with them, they lived within them, they assimilated into native tribes. And then remember how the English interacted with them. There was no intermarriage. They only wanted to push them out. So he's not seeing a great future for his people, right? Pontiac's going to be upset about what the perspectives could be for him going forward. And so as he's upset about losing these French allies, he's going to put together a loose confederation of Iroquois, Ottawa, and several tribes in the region in an attempt to drive the British out. So these are multiple tribes in that Ohio River Valley area. And so the British are going to retaliate essentially using smallpox blankets. They don't want to fight a war. They want to find a way to do this, but they still fight skirmishes with them, do what they can with chemical warfare or smallpox in an attempt to kill off Pontiac and his native tribes. But as a whole, it comes to a stalemate. But what this shows more than anything is that British has a need to stabilize their relationship with the Western Indians, because remember, their debt has been increased and they can't afford to police the western parts of the American colonies. So The vocab term that you may need to know most is this proclamation line of 1763. After Pontiac's rebellion, the real impact of Pontiac's rebellion is this proclamation line of 1763, in which the British decide that they are going to close off the frontier to all colonial expansion. Okay, closed off. Think about that. All of these colonists have just fought a war with Britain, and now they're paying for that war, and now they're told that the only benefit that they thought that they were going to get is not actually allowed, and they can't move west. So the colonists are going to be pretty upset about that, right? And so in summary, the 7 Years' War is vitally important. It's that war between the French and Indian and the American colonists and the British. And so after victory, France is driven out by that Treaty of Paris, and Britain has domination of the colonies, complete domination. But with the proclamation of 1763, because of Pontiac's rebellion, everyone is shut out from moving west. And that, my friends, that proclamation of 1763 is a massive, massive turning point. I cannot say that enough. All right. So, I hope that this information here, at least the summary, is something that you can remember. Remember these high points, if nothing else. Remember Treaty of Paris, the players in the French and Indian War, and the Proclamation of 1763. There's all about cause and effect in this. So please remember, I will see you fellas in class. Much love.